On November 24th, 1971, at around 2:45 in the afternoon, a scene was unfolding at Portland International Airport in America that would later be counted among the world's most mysterious crimes. On that hazy afternoon, one day before the Thanksgiving holiday, Northwest Orient Airlines flight number 175 stood ready for takeoff. Amid the crowd of passengers, a man quietly walked up to the ticket counter and gave his name as Dan Cooper. Dressed in a black suit, of medium height, around 40 years of age, this man looked so ordinary that no one's eyes would have lingered on him. He paid cash for a one-way ticket and took seat number 18C by the window in the smoking section. The plane took off, moving through the clouds towards Seattle. The man sitting inside looked like a completely normal passenger from the outside, but the plan brewing within him was about to change the history of American aviation forever. He signaled flight attendant Florence Schaffner to come closer and handed her a piece of paper. At first, Florence thought it was the phone number of a lonely passenger, so she put the paper in her purse without reading it. But the man told her, in a slow and steady voice, that she should read the note carefully because he had a bomb. With trembling hands, Florence unfolded the paper, which said that his briefcase contained explosive material, and that if his demands were not met, he would blow up the entire plane. He had written his demands in clear terms: $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and arrangements to refuel the plane after landing. Florence passed the message on to Captain William Scott, and the cockpit immediately informed Seattle Air Traffic Control and the FBI. The rest of the passengers on board had no idea that they were caught up in a hijacking, because the crew took great care to keep the situation looking normal. On the ground, a flurry of activity had already begun. Officials from Northwest Orient Airlines, local police, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation came together to work out a plan for handling the situation without losing a single passenger's life. The airline decided that all of the hijackers' demands would be met, since passenger safety was the top priority at the time. The plane was ordered to land at Seattle-Tacoma Airport, where, after hours of waiting, $200,000 in cash in $20 bills and 4 parachutes were finally delivered to the aircraft. Every note was carefully photocopied and its serial number recorded so that they could be identified in the future. Throughout this process, the hijacker allowed all the other passengers to disembark safely, making it clear that his aim was not to take anyone's life, but simply to obtain money. Only the captain, co-pilot, a flight engineer, and flight attendant Tina Mucklow now remained on board. Once he had the money and the parachutes, he ordered the plane to take off again, giving clear instructions that the plane's altitude should not exceed 10,000 feet, that its speed should be kept low, and that the rear door should be left open in state. The crew in the cockpit gradually began to sense that something unusual was happening in the back, feeling a slight change in pressure, as though the rear door were being opened. At around 8 o'clock at night, amid heavy rain and strong winds, the man strapped a parachute to his body, packed the $200,000 in cash into a bag, and jumped out through the rear door of the plane. From that moment on, this jump became a mystery in America's skies that the FBI poured its full strength into solving for the next 45 years. Yet to this day, no solid conclusion has ever been reached. When the plane landed at Reno Airport, the crew confirmed that the hijacker was no longer on board. The FBI immediately opened a special investigation file on the case under the name NORJAK, and one of the largest and longest-running hijacking investigations in American history began. The first team of investigating agents launched a search operation in the dense forests of Washington and Oregon states, where it was believed the man had jumped. Helicopters, ground troops, and local volunteers combed miles of forests, rivers, and hilly terrain, but neither a body, nor a parachute, nor any trace of the money was found. FBI special agents estimated that jumping by parachute from such a height, in such heavy rain and stormy winds, without any experience, was almost equivalent to suicide, and so the initial assumption was that the man could not have survived. But as years passed without any body, any bone, any remains being found, this theory too began to weaken. Interestingly, the man had shown such careful planning throughout the entire operation that investigators began to suspect he must have had some military background, perhaps a former paratrooper or a former Air Force officer. He had known the technical details of the aircraft with such precision: fuel capacity, altitude, speed, the structure of the door, that this did not look like the work of an ordinary criminal. The FBI questioned thousands of suspects, combed through lists of hundreds of former soldiers, paratroopers, and aviation experts, but every lead broke off at some turn or another. In 1980, 8 years later, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram, while digging in the sand along the banks of the Columbia River, found 3 bundles of $20 bills whose serial numbers matched those recorded among the money given to Cooper. This discovery proved to be a major turning point in the case because it proved that the money had indeed reached somewhere in the very area where investigators had been searching. But it also raised the question of how so much money could have scattered along the riverbank if the man had survived. This discovery gave the FBI's investigation a new direction. Scientists and geologists were called in to determine how the river's current could have carried the money to that spot, leading to the speculation that perhaps the man had either been injured while jumping or had fallen into the water. But some investigators believed that the money might have been deliberately left there to mislead the investigating agencies, while the real hijacker lived an ordinary life somewhere far away, under a new identity. Richard Floyd McCoy, a former military officer, was counted among the strongest suspects, because a few months later, he attempted to hijack another plane in exactly the same manner, with a plan to jump by parachute and escape. But McCoy was soon caught, and since his physical build did not match Cooper's, the FBI eventually ruled him out of the case. Over the decades that this investigation ran, the FBI prepared thousands of pages of files and spent countless hours on interviews, but the outcome remained the same every time. No solid evidence, no body, no arrest. Finally, in 2016, after a long and exhausting 45-year investigation, the FBI officially announced that it was closing active investigation into the case, though if any solid physical evidence were to surface in the future, such as a piece of the parachute or another bundle of money, the investigation could be reopened. This announcement was an unprecedented moment in America's criminal history, as for the first time such a large and widely discussed case was being closed without any resolution. This case also changed America's aviation security system forever, because following this very incident, a special device known as the Cooper vane was installed on all Boeing 727 aircraft, which prevented the rear door from being opened during flight. Dan Cooper, whom the media later mistakenly named D.B. Cooper, remains alive today in American folklore as a mysterious figure who, without any violence and without taking a single life, challenged the entire system on the strength of his wit and daring alone. Every year, a special festival is still held in his memory in a small town in Washington state, where people dress up as him and celebrate, as though he were some kind of hero. Someone who, while living like an ordinary man, made his name immortal in history. But whatever the truth may be, even today, more than 45 years later, no body has been found, no parachute, no solid identification, and this very mystery keeps this story standing as the greatest unsolved puzzle in America's criminal history. A puzzle whose answer may perhaps never be found, and whose echo can still be heard today in those dense forests, where, on one dark night, an ordinary-looking man vanished forever into the pages of history.